So no, it was a very good day. And I can't describe it any other way because it was a specific state of mind rather than an analytical experience. So there's an analytical explanation for it, but I don't have it. So that means my feelings in this specific area have outpaced my logic. So that is a very good thing for me because usually they lag far, far behind. But yeah, I was playing the guitar and then I just realized if I had this specific feeling that I could identify, and that was the only thing I cared about, and that was the only thing I took care of maintaining, and I didn't let myself get distracted from it. And I didn't think about my guitar playing. If I didn't do any of those things and I just had this feeling, it was like someone else was playing my guitar and they didn't make any mistakes and they always knew what note to play and it sounded incredible. It was letting my subconscious play the guitar for me is what it was. My hands were not my own. And I was able to sustain it. And to me, that's incredible. So my guitar, my subconscious is a much better guitar player than I am. And I'm just so happy because now I know how to do that everywhere because I know what turns it off and on. I'm very happy about that. Couldn't be happier. That was, like I said, that nut was a 15-year nut I've been trying to crack.
How come? Okay, for me, I think of your Minecraft stuff as being in that theta state when you got into the rhythm of
Yes.
hitting your max per hour.
Yep, that's exactly what that was. That was one of the places I could touch it.
Now, because you had that before me, once we started talking about meditation, that's what I always kind of likened it to, or that's the closest that or music. Now,
so the difference would be meditation to remove everything from mental vision, and meditation to be at peace with everything while there's chaos around you. Two very different kinds of meditation.
Do you remember
I do the second one.
Do you remember the time I told you that I watched the video? It was sometime within the last year.
Yeah.
And I said the video said being calm is the least productive thing you can do with meditation.
That was my that's the alternate path. So there's two paths to reach this state. And one of them is like watching an expert daredevil who is always a split second away from dying. And the other one is somebody who is 100% chill, but also has the technical knowledge to know how to act when things go wrong. So their reactions to their reactions are part of that total calm. And so those are the two paths that I've seen. So the path that I took was not to achieve total calm, to pay attention to what I was doing. The path that I took was to achieve total competence so that I could do what I was doing in a high anxiety state, which meant that when I could do it sufficiently enough, then my anxiety would go away because I knew no matter how anxious I was, I had this. So now imagine being able to be that good in that way, to where there is zero calm ever. And now being able to take that wealth of knowledge and transfer it to the world of total chill. And that's what I had today. It was like I had the full access to my library and I didn't even have to decide anything. I just knew. And it was really cool, at least for the guitar anyways. I have to expand this into other areas because you still got to put the hours in. Your subconscious still has to learn it.
I was talking to my sound guy this morning because I did something a little bit petty with my church guy. And I talked to my sound guy again about how, for me, when I play and I'm in the flow state, I don't hear it. And I've tried to hear it before, but I think I haven't tried to manipulate the senses like this in so long that
I have the other direction if that helps you.
That well, I mean, I could.
No, there's a very specific thing happening, and I'm aware of it from a different direction if you want. that you don't hear it, specifically. And the root, unless you have the root and you were about to share that.
I'm sure I have a root. I think that there's multiple. I
Which
don't
one
think
do you
that
see?
there's I don't think that there's one way to be.
Well, a seed becomes a plant with many leaves.
Okay.
So things can be multiple things and have a root cause, is my point, which is why we have the term root. So it's like, it's a yes and if you take 10 yes ands and say, by the way, these 10 yes ands have this in common, that's the thing I look for.
1 second.
Okay, I hear you got some music happening.
All right, I took care of the music. But let's see where you were going. You were claiming that you knew the root for the vaguely
Not hearing
I
your
gave you.
music.
Yes.
Yeah. So
this thing that I believe is 100 different leaves.
So see if it's
We have
compatible. Then.
100
That's a good
different
test. A blind test is a very good test. So whatever you say it is, as far as close or further away, that's the law as far as it goes, because it's a subjective measurement. But I want to see how my blind guess compares to your subjective guesses and how you think it might tie in or not.
Sure.
So it's a way to test myself. How well do I understand the mind of Tony if I'm using myself as a reflective template and adjusting for what I think I should. So the biggest thing that I would have problems with my music was I have almost a perfect music ear, and that's a curse when you're high anxiety, because that means every note that's wrong is the only thing you hear. And over time, you build this continual shell of anxiety, and it becomes a self-resonating thing. So what that means is when you don't have that, you get to feel the experience of playing music that sounds good and makes you feel good. Now, if you are a fear-driven person, that is a very delicate state. However, if you're an emotionally calibrated person, then that means that is your preferred state. So it has stability that exists outside of your musical experience. And a couple of those notes here and there don't even register on that sense, because you are living where you want, and the music is a vehicle rather than a destination. So we have reached the same point. When I talk about flow state and music, I talk about being able to play music that I'm in love with because none of it is wrong. And so the reason that I love it makes it harder for me to reach that state, because I see ugliness when it doesn't turn out the way I want. And you just see the beauty of being in that state, and the music is always there with you. So it's like, man, I'm here. Why would I ever want to leave? Now, how'd I do?
I think it's a little bit different because on Sunday, for example,
A little different compared to what?
Compared to what you said about how the mistakes resonate. Because remember how you said, for you, remember how you said you focus more on tearing things down in general?
Yeah, and the root of that is to tear a thing down, you have to know where it's wrong. And that's kind of what I can look at a thing and say, what's the least efficient thing about it? Or what's the weak point? What's the break point? Or in terms of music, the note that doesn't fit with all the other notes.
Yeah, and when I'm playing 9 notes at a time, it's so either this week or last week, I realized at some point in the song, as I was supposed to be singing, and supposed to be directing the choir and supposed to be doing the music, that something was a little bit off. And for me, that felt a lot more off than it was. And that isn't the first time this has happened, but I only am able to know this because of the recording. So so I knew something was off during the time, and I fixed it to be more in line with what I thought it should have been. But when I went back to the recording, I could not find what made me feel that way.
Interesting. So it was probably, now were you listening for the music or were you watching the reactions of the choir people? Because that might have been where the information came from.
If it's about the reaction from the choir people,
There's
it's about
subconscious
their
body
voices.
language, meaning you would have noticed it.
It's not in that, because I don't watch the choir for body language because they don't like to be
No,
watched.
no, I'm saying
I
you don't,
listen.
are they,
I
if
listen
they're
to the
within your
choir, so-
peripheral vision, I'm
But what I'm
saying that you
saying
have
is I
access
don't
to
do
that
that.
information, your subconscious does.
I don't use that. I use their voices. If they're singing, if I
Yeah.
hear them, if they sound confident, if they sound like they know what's going on, if they're coming in at the right times, then I know I'm directing properly. The
But
only
you
time I
couldn't hear the difference this time?
in the singers, no, because this, okay, so
On the
I
playback
always
either?
guide on the playback. Yeah, on the playback I could hear them. I couldn't hear the dissonance that I felt during the
Okay.
time, but I mean, I can always vibe with them. It's kind of like when I DJ, I can usually tell what's going on without having to focus on the room's body language because I can feel it. In the
Well,
same way,
things ripple. That's just things ripple. So if something happens in the club, it has an effect that goes across the club. You don't need to see all the way across the club to know a pattern that you've seen pass by you 100 times.
exactly, I can know there's a fight without having to look up.
Yep.
So I think that I think it could be similar because I can still know when something's off without hearing it, because I can feel it and fix
Yeah.
it. So I feel like it's similar. However, as far as the case of living where I love it or being able to produce what I love, or that part has to be blissful, I think is different because it can still be dissonant for me within that stage.
Yeah.
And I won't feel that dissonance again the next time I listen to it.
So the only statement that I'm making is not of is or isn't. Remember, that's not a thing that I do. Is or is not is not.
Right, and I said it's similar.
So when I talk about this specific scale, a good analogy would be two people say the exact same thing. One of those person is your wife, and the other person is insulting you and is an enemy of yours, but the words are exactly the same. All I'm saying is that the default state is part of the calibration. So I'm talking a relative distance that would be a range for you, but still could be corrected to a level that is more commonly felt at the lower end of when people, you know what I'm saying? Like it reaches lower if you can reset your default. And if you don't even think of that most of the time, then you're kind of have a range that can be broad. But what I'm saying is your entire broad range that you've developed over time to compensate to not move is a thing that can move if you can learn to calibrate the whole thing to move as one. So it's like taking the theta state and sliding it up the frequencies, or in my case, down the frequencies, because I'm an ascending climb, the negative frequencies are the lower ones. So it becomes almost like a space needle of your own mind. And when you're at the high frequencies is when you can see far. And when you're at the low frequencies is when you can see very, very small. So you can see an atom and you can see the solar system. That's how much scope your mind has with this. And most people only use a very, very small window that is 2 blocks from their house and the 10 people they know. So it is the shoulders of giants, literally, but you can take your home base and move it like a spotlight instead of a thing that doesn't move, like a fortress. Does that vibe with you?
It can.
Well,
Like,
it can or it can't,
I'm not
that's a
sure.
good thing.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it couldn't because it's not specific enough for me. Like, for me, it seems like
It's
saying,
universal, I believe. That's why it wasn't specific. I have yet to find a counterexample.
and I can agree with that, but from my perspective, that means it's not saying something important because it's so general or because it
No, no,
fits.
no. Remember, we have opposite definitions of important when it comes to looking small.
And that's why I mentioned it.
The
That's why I
value is
mentioned
not how you think it can be used. The value is that it doesn't change. Because if I have a machine that does a stupid thing, and I could never figure that out, all I need to do is be creative enough about what I do before the thing reaches my stupid thing that will always do the same thing. And if I can find the right input to make that stupid output the perfect answer, that is how you manufacture an idea. So it doesn't matter how specific it is. What matters is that it doesn't change. So that's why these generalities are so powerful, is because you can take them anywhere and they don't change. So it's like a core set of building blocks that you could carry with you to build things. And then when you get there, there's unique pieces that you don't have, which is why you go there in the first place. But that is the utility of small things that don't change. They can go anywhere, which is how I know so much about things I've never heard anything about. I have so many tiny pieces that don't change that
From
they
your
build together
perspective,
in approximations that often reach higher than what the person's trying to tell me.
remember I said I mentioned it because of all this.
Yes.
And for me, all that's true, but from my perspective, it's opposite in that the small things are what you need and look for and value because of those things. While for me, those might have been the things that I've always been in tune with, raised by my Stoic father, who had the catchphrase, most things don't matter. Meaning
The
that
Dunning-Kruger effect.
meaning that you look for what's important early and identify it and only put energy there in a sense. Or and so what I see what I see you putting value in, not changing, I see there's value there as well, but I don't see
How to use it?
the same value.
Well, yeah, the utility is not there for you.
Well, I feel like the utility is abundant for me, and that maybe that's what I'm focused on. Maybe because I have the
I don't know,
utility.
man. From my perspective, you're
need
attracted to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Because I just have described the thing that I say to be vastly complex and it takes a lifetime to master. And you've said, no, I got it figured out and it's 2 lines. So just beware of that. That's all. You might be right, but you've just given a textbook example of that effect by action, if not by perspective.
I said no. I thought I said yes and.
No. When you were saying you pretty much have it, I pretty much got that. I was like, yeah, you do.
I thought we were talking about the information.
But
I was talking about the information. Is it like I have it, you have it, books have it? Like
I don't think you have it. I don't think you have what you think you have. You need to teach me something in my language that I don't understand for you to have everything I have. Until then, I'm translating for you. That's when I'll know you have something I don't, is when it's said in words I would understand explicitly, meaning you have a perfect grasp of how I think, and you have completed my thought process to 1 degree further than I currently have. Otherwise, it's just a happy merging. So we have mergings all the time where natural interactions take place and I recognize utility and you do as well when we merge. But I have not yet received a piece of constructed growth that was packaged, sealed, and delivered and given to me that was a thing I did not already have. But that's not an insult because my literal life's goal is to walk around and collect as many of these packages as I can, and they all look the same after a while.
I don't see why that proves that you know more about it, though, to speak somebody else's language about it.
Well, if what I mean is that to know it is to know that language, because an idea is a language. If it's complex enough.
Really?
Two-dimensional ideas, which is my current limit, are complex. But anyways, think about that. I know we
Maybe
both of
that's
us know
part
this.
of
The
the.
longer we hang out, the smarter we're both going to get.
Maybe
But
that's part of
regardless, that needs to
the.
keep happening.
Maybe that's part of the higher self that I don't feel the need to connect with in order to control. So I don't need to speak the
Lower
language in order to
frequency.
feel like I have
It's
the
the
information.
anti-Tony. It's the
I will get you
intentional
some
feeling
paper.
bad of things, which why would you do that? And the only reason you would do that is the reason I did it, is because I was already there and I wanted to get out. And learning how to get out is the same thing as learning how to be there. So it definitely does not make sense to go there on purpose. So I hold none of that against people, and some of the wisdom they just have by being happy and show that I took decades to understand, I'm envious. So it's not a completely one-sided deal, there was a cost, and part of me says, maybe I just, have a simple life and don't think about all these crazy reasons that people do stuff so I can figure it out. And that's a good life too. Well, it's not the life I've got, so this is the one I'm stuck with, where everything has to make sense. The good thing is after a while it does. The questions do get answered. Then you have a different problem. The problem is, how do I find better questions? That's how you know that you're a voracious mental eater. So we talked about in the last lecture, what was the title? I don't remember what the title was. It was past mental illness. Was it mental illness? No, the one before that, the one where, how to learn faster. In the lecture for how to learn anything faster without learning anything at all, we talked about consciousness using information as a metaphor for food. And we spent a lot of time on that, and there's a lot of good reasons for that, because pretty much an entire ecosystem of different eating habits, diets, configurations, ways of subsisting, etc., you can make an analogous comparison for the way people like to absorb knowledge. Everything from the fat hedonistic slob who only eats processed food and dies young because their brain can't support its own weight, because it's all the same crap, all the way up to herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, parasites, symbiotes, plants. If it's possible to take in a thing, convert it into sustenance, and excrete some of it out, that is how consciousness treats information. So if you've run out of things to eat because your consciousness is like a Pokemon deck, it only cares about new things once, and then they're not new anymore. A new thing is an encounter with the unknown. It's a drug. You're a drug seeker if you're always trying to learn new things. I'm such a drug seeker. I'm such a mental drug seeker when it comes to always being creative, always needing to know. There's a difference between doing something and being something. And it's a lot harder to be something than it is to do something. Because if you're doing something, you can stop. And if you're being something, you can't. So to be in this high voracious state shows that my extraction from what I consume is very small. So I need a lot of it. Okay, my digestion, my mental digestion is weak in that sense. But you make up for that with volume. And one of the things that you can do with that sort of broad spectrum, which is we cover that, is you can map points. So if you know that you can only consume information in points, you need to learn triangulation and sonar so you can fill in the gaps. That's the metaphor. So I was stuck there. That's where everybody with ADHD is, by the way. Everybody with high anxiety is like that. They can see points on a map. And it's very disorienting, and it's hard to know where anything is. And if anyone tries to take you places that you haven't been before, and they don't explain why, and if they're insulting at the same time, it's not pleasant for anyone involved. Regardless of whether or not that's the proper destination to go, the behavior along the way doesn't make the trip any better.
But it is possible to enjoy that, right? You said people, And then you said a generalization, which is a default, but it's a good place checker and high five for me to understand that it's possible to be a person that's the opposite of that as well, without being conscious of it if you were raised that way.
Just define the opposite of that for me so I can have a clear picture. What would the opposite of that look like? Instead of
But you
saying what
just-
it isn't, say what it is.
So instead of saying, is it possible, say, can this exist?
No, I mean, be more specific about the what this is. Like, I had all the structure was good, the specificity of what that
Basically,
looked
the,
like.
the thing that you said people find disgusting or discomfort in or go away from or don't want or don't like. You said it's about the changes. No, the language. No, the idea, the concept. Let's see, where were we? I gotta walk it back for me. That's a little different. Walking it back for someone else is more objective. So let's see. You were on.
Let's talk about mental diet, points, people with ADHD.
Yes, and
Then you said, but wouldn't it be possible for?
yeah, I was building on the negative that you gave, the thing that people, you said the word people, and that's what made me think about my question, which was just, yeah, people can do that, but remember,
That, the word,
remember,
what is that? The word that, what is
Exactly.
substitute the word that?
that would be great if I could.
Oh.
I doubt I
Okay, so
can.
we're getting closer. I just wanted to make sure
but,
we didn't have it, and I didn't either, okay.
But yeah, I think that thought is gone. But kind of just the principle of when you say how people feel about their shadow, and kind of like how
Did
I
we talk
broke
about
down
the
the
shadow
group
yet
of
today?
Heyoka. Say what?
I said, did we talk about the shadow yet today?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this is a different conversation you're referencing.
This is just the same concept from what I forgot.
So something about the shadow. The shadows speak, talking to shadows.
It's
Does
about how
everybody
we
hear the
feel.
same voice?
It's about how we feel about the shadow. Because remember, my
so the
friends,
definition of the
Heyoka
shadow.
group.
Well, my
Remember,
definition of the
Heyoka
shadow specifically is the parts of ourselves we choose to
What
ignore.
about? Right. So my question is, my Heyoka friends and groups are, I believe, different or feel
I
differently
know the answer to your
about the
question.
shadow than you seem to preach about it.
Oh, you just take
In
the
this
sign.
lecture,
If it
you
is
said
math, you
people-
just take the sign and reverse it. So it's a negative number. So the square root of 25. It's not just 5, it's also negative 5. That's the difference. So long as they meet at the same point, that's how this type of information behaves everywhere, Tony. It's a bifurcation. Remember we did that bifurcation one where there's always that positive x minus x, and that they're perfectly parabolic and translative. That's why my reflective assumptions are always spot on, is because I know where I am on my map and I know how to do a reflection. They're guesses, but they're following a pattern. And the pattern turns out is not wrong, because that's the nature of the information. So it's all about figuring out what the information is before you'll know how it behaves. But once you can do that, then it becomes A plus B plus C. I think that's what, so yes, they have a way that approaches the solution and it's possible and stable, but they have half of it. So as long as they reject the other half of the solution, what I have is, I have a subjective experience of the entire solution I understand, and a subjectively generated reflection of that. So I have objective, self-measured, albeit, information about both parts of the solution, one by experience and one by math. And so long as I am true to myself for what I'm seeing and I'm not being fooled or biased or committing fallacies, then my reflections are always spot on. That's the power of things that don't change, is because something that doesn't change usually has a twin somewhere. And that twin that also doesn't change can be very strange and very interesting and very useful, because nobody knows it exists. And the only thing that is more powerful than something that doesn't change is something that doesn't change that nobody else knows about. Personally power, anyways. Subjective personal power will be measured by that. How much you know that nobody else does, and how you use that. So if everybody knows it, it's not special. There's no advantage, no evolutionary advantage. So let's figure out how to get you more power, because that's what this episode is about. So this episode is only 2 words: manufacturing creativity. So I am going to take the most beautiful thing in all of human existence, which is the capacity to be creative, and break it down to a boring, successful, mechanical algorithm that doesn't fail. And it will suck the joy out of every creative person who feels that this is an abomination. However, it also levels the playing field if that person is not you. So only incredibly creative people will find this offensive, because I'm spilling the beans, as it were. Well, be more creative with your creativity then. You should have invested in it better. Instead you made, I don't know, propane trash man with welded metal from like King of the Hill. So whole brain creativity. So creativity is connection. Creativity is perspective. Creativity specifically is a dick measuring contest. And what do I mean by that? Now, first of all, I'm using that metaphor because everybody understands what a dick measuring contest is. There's a lot of motivations behind it. Everybody thinks they have a good chance of winning. And in the moment of truth, everyone very quickly forgets whose was the best. And then the next time the conversation comes up, everybody repeats the whole process again. And the only person in the room who doesn't give a shit about this is the person who's already won. Because they know they have the biggest one. And everyone else is just posturing for second place at that point. So creativity is mental big dick energy. All right. Look, the sex metaphors work. I didn't, shortest path, okay? The sex parts of the brain are close to the creativity parts of the brain. That's not a mistake.
I think I need to make a Monday night talk about sex, because that's another important concept, and it's human. Ooh, the same way how you say we all experience fear.
Yeah.
I think we all experience the need or the value or the desire to reproduce in some way.
So you know what's funny is that the moment of orgasm is a submission to the illogical nature of love or the irrational nature of fear. In both cases, you just reach a state, I don't know what the fuck to do, so fire every part of my brain.
I think I've heard that before.
It's if I had to think of it, it would be like a naturally generated electroshock pulse. I don't know what you could do with it since it hits everything, but hey, it doesn't stop people from trying to figure it out. If that didn't happen, by the way, there'd be no more people. So that's part of it. But
that's a theory. I posed the question online already sometime here in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And nobody.
No, here's the thing: is if sex didn't feel good, only smart people would reproduce.
And from a status, most people believe that we don't have to like it to still
No. I'm
feel
saying
the desire.
if there was no physical reward at all.
Right. Yeah, that's the question.
Only a burden.
That was the question that I gave.
I could see that. I could see that raising IQ much faster over time.
But you also see it lessening he said only smart people would reproduce. While most
they
people
would certainly reproduce less.
There would be less reproduction as a species.
Yes.
However, most people still seem to believe that we would reproduce stably. And
fear would be a hell of a motivator.
No, it wouldn't be for fear. It'd be to pass on the genetics.
When I get old.
It'd be to pass on the genetics. Or
I'm saying, who's going to take care of me when I get older? It would sound a lot nicer than, man, I better ensure this people after me have my genetic code. Who's gonna help me run my store?
That's definitely a different perspective.
I think
but
that
it's
actually
more
that's
common.
probably what would take over. It would go back to what it used to be when people had medieval farms. You had kids because they were farm hands. Your kids were commodity, a work commodity at that point. They were monetized.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, that's way off topic. Let's file that away for another day. So creativity. So manufacturing, we talked about that word. I'm going to give you a stable way to produce it. And creativity is mental big dick energy / the ability to approach a problem from many different perspectives. So I talked about how to find perspectives. I talked about how to measure perspectives for bias. I talked about how to switch between them, how to triangulate, how to reflect, how to invert, how to find the axioms, how to know how those axioms defeat themselves. All of these things have been covered. So that is your tool set. So if the only tool in that box that you know how to use is the hammer, everything becomes a nail. That's great when you need to break something. It's not great when you need to screw something. You need a screwdriver. I dare you to screw in a single screw with a wooden mallet. It's not going to happen.
Oh, I tried that a lot as a kid.
You break the mallet before the wood would chip and before that screw is going to be nailed into any piece of wood. Probably hurt yourself in the process too. That's not the right way to do that. But the point is, so creativity is how well do you know your different tools? How much do you practice your different tools? When I say tools, what am I talking about? I've got a list of them behind me, some broad ones, and I'll share some other ones that are a little bit more targeted. So the first thing you have is analytical intelligence. This is familiar to me. I haven't looked at these pictures before today, but this looks familiar to me when it says analytical intelligence, and it links that to goals driven. If everything you do produces movement throughout your life story, that means that every move that you make that you are not 100% sure of is doing things to your life story that you don't understand. Because it's not on purpose. You're not paying attention to it, but you're at the center of it. You are the ripples. And everybody thinks of ripples in the pond because that's a nice simple metaphor. But it's not a good metaphor because ripples in an enclosed space with other objects produce bounce back, discordance, reverberation, and all sorts of effects. So you could be doing something right, but because you fucked up something else, your stability is not suitable for what you're trying to do. So your analytical intelligence has failed you. You didn't understand your goal well enough to map out every step it would take to get there, which is why you don't get there. One reason is you can't see it. And I don't mean you can't see the goal. Seeing the goal is easy. Seeing the goal as a reality linked thing that can behave with causality means you can trace the steps back from where you are to where you want to go. And if any of those steps don't make sense, you're failed. Because you are going in a direction that you don't understand. You have no way of knowing if it's right or wrong. And your only choices are toward and away. So what do you base that on? Well, I can tell you what you base that on. You base that on your perspective, your subjective perspective, your default setting. Where am I right now? So you will understand getting closer to your goal. And you will understand moving further away from your goal. But if you don't understand your goal, you'll never be able to get very far. Especially when the thing holding you back is a Mobius strip. We've talked about the one-dimensional nature of axioms and what it means to be trapped in the false dichotomy. That means that going in one direction for long enough will feel like you've gone the wrong way the moment you flip to the other side of that strip. So you can see your goal. And because now you have followed this thought process, you can see your goal from two different sides. That means that there is something fundamental to the way that you understand the world that is keeping you from choosing the right path, and it's putting you in a circle. And that thing that is keeping you from choosing the right path is feeling like it needs to feel like you're on the right path instead of paying attention to the path you're on. That's analytical intelligence. So the next one, results driven. This is a big one too, operational intelligence. And this is a great definition for what I'm talking about, Tony, when I'm talking about the utility of things that don't change. That's operational intelligence. How can I use what I have? What are my limits? What are my resources? What's the most efficient way to do things? And that goes in reverse. Look, it's results driven. That means you don't need to understand how it's done every time. You only need to understand that it works and when it works. So that allows you to use tools that you could not build. That's what it means to get a good idea from someone else. You don't need to learn to understand it the way they do, but you do need to understand how it works enough to use it for you. That's what it means to learn somebody else's idea. Operational intelligence is where reverse engineering happens. I have a nickname for this. Back when I didn't have very many perspectives to draw on, I didn't have enough perspectives to create my own brand new perspectives. I needed to borrow other people's perspectives. This is the point of my life I'm talking about right now. I was collecting other people's perspectives so I could understand my own, but I didn't have the full picture yet. But every time I met somebody new, they would tell me this cool thing that they learned how to do with their mind. And it was really cool stuff. Like one was how to remember images and the technique that they used and the thought process they had. And I'll be damned if I didn't learn it. And after a while, I could do it too. But I had to ask them a lot of questions. Hey, what about this? Why isn't it working? And they would tell me, oh, you're feeling this way. Oh, you're doing that. And I would be like, well, okay, because that's what I say. But they would tell me I was feeling things that I didn't understand, or I was having problems I didn't see. Well, I took their word for it because they could also teach me how to practice it, because that was always my next question. What's wrong? Okay, how do I fix it? And they would say, try this, or read this, or listen to this video, or this thing explains it well, or you go out and do this, or learn about blank. And every time I listened, it would work. And then now I would create a copy of this perspective, this little tool that they had, and it became my own. And I called that my Mega Man fighting reserve. Like Mega Man is a video game character, and he goes around and he fights all the bosses. And whenever he goes through their level, which is all their things and their monsters and their stuff, and you go through all that trauma, if you can reach the guy at the end and connect with him, in Mega Man's case, it's weapons. In my case, it's empathetically, but the level becomes all of the defenses that you have to get through for that to work. If you can defeat that enemy, meaning you can gain the trust of this person who does not want to share because people are scary, why would you share? But if you can bridge that gap by being kind to them, then you get their power because they give it to you and they're happy to share because they learn from you too. And that's what I always do is when that process works properly, it becomes a two-way street. So I look at it as, what can this person give me that I don't already have? I don't care about the stuff I know. Whatever they want to learn from me, if I have it, they can have it. It's like downloads, you know, I don't lose anything that I have. I just need to know what you need. That's how I view my arsenal of ideas. It's not what ideas do I have, it's which one do you need? Which one benefits you? I needed a lot of help, so I had to find all of them. So, and I like to collect them. It's fun for me. So that's kind of the difference there. Well, the next one is relational intelligence, people-driven. This is where I fall down. And look at that. What color is that, Tony? What color is people-driven?
Is that pink?
I'm colorblind, so I was really hoping to rely on you.
Is that pink?
I don't know, I'm colorblind.
It's either pink or red, but it looks like a pink to me.
Okay, so I just say that one's interesting because I'm some red-green colorblind and I have a hard time with people. I used to have a much harder time, now it's gotten a lot better.
People driven is red and results driven is green.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right, good. So when I'm talking about people driven, well, that's a lot of different things. Like now your personalities come into play. How many people do you have? What are they good at? What are they bad at? What makes them angry? What makes them fight? What makes them cooperate? It's different. A lot of different ways to understand people and a lot of different types of people there are to understand. There's rules, but you got to be aware. Those rules are so vast that you can't handle them with a book. Only a quantum computer can handle the vastness of the human experience. And it needs several measurements because every time you measure a person, you're cutting infinity in half. So you have to be careful how you measure them and that you don't get the wrong half cut off, or that you don't cut things off that are part of something else that you desperately want to get rid of, but your knife hand is sloppy. And instead of removing a mole, you take off the whole arm. That's what people do with their perspectives when they get stuck in false either or. So measuring a person's wavelength is very delicate. It's literally the measuring of infinity by half, multiple times to create a shape that is this person. And if you know the shapes that people make, finding which shape you have in front of you is easy. Very much like, I don't know all of the different shapes that are possible to draw on a piece of paper. But if I learn how to see the drawing as a different thing than the paper, I can recognize any shape on that paper without having to be taught about it in advance. That is humanity. So manufacturing creativity, that's the relational intelligence. How quickly can you find the people you're talking to? How accurate is your vision of them? And how good are you at translating what you know into words they will understand, words they will agree with, words that will make them feel good? Because what should make you feel good if you are properly created is being goals driven. So if the goal happens, you are happy. Not if the march goes to the tune of your drum. You need to be a better drummer if you only know one beat. And if someone isn't playing along at all, you know how to beat them with your drumstick until they get in line or step off. But either way, that's your responsibility if you're a project manager, and relational intelligence is what gets you there. But that's also a self-reflective process, because anything you can understand about another person is a thing that you already understand about yourself. You just have to remember to point the light inside. Everything that's true about everyone else is true about you. At least it could be. So the question isn't, is that true about me right now? It's what percentage of that is true about me right now, and what percentage of that, what would need to happen to my life to make that percentage the opposite of what it is now? If you can understand those two things, you'll have the whole map of everything.
I don't think I've actually do this before, but just rewind 2 steps so that I have that point again. The one that says people, because normally at this point what I do is I say, well, is it the other way? But I understand a lot better, or I'm really connected to the square root of 25 analogy.
Yes.
So I think that's great for us. And so instead of asking the square root of 25 now, I'm asking, let's just get back up to 25 again, the same way, and yes, I'll be able to look at it a little differently maybe.
Yes, so the point is an exact identification of that. That is correct.
The point is
same idea. Anything you understand about another person is something you already understand about yourself. You just have to remember to look at that reflection too.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm looking at differently than you, or I'm deriving to differently than you. Or,
that point is often treated as an either or, meaning only one path, you get here or you don't. When really it's a yes and from 2 directions, or an either or if you go long enough.
Well, I'm not seeing the yes and because it says that one can't
So
not
you
know something.
remember, so I'm gonna ask you to combine a concept, the square root of 25,
Okay.
one concept that you understand, a plus and minus solution. You need a second?
You're good. I gotta cut her a piece of bread.
Okay. So the first idea is the square root of 25 having a plus and minus solution. And then remember, what would it look like if you cut a Mobius strip in half and spread it out? So I'm saying the information contained is the parabolic graph of -5 and +5 for the square root of 25. However, geometrically, as an object of consciousness, it behaves like a Mobius strip, and going far enough along one path takes you to the other side. That's what it means to travel through the 0, 0 point of the graph of solutions. So if the solution is a parabola and it reflects, there's a point where of reflection. So that point of reflection then is the point that I'm talking about there.
Is that point of reflection and either I don't have
That's the
or I
point where
do
the
have?
Mobius strip splits.
And is that in either I have or I don't have point?
That is what I'm saying is that if you don't see one as being the other, you don't have both. Because both of them together is only one thing. And that one thing is the complete map of all solutions, which is different than one stable and working solution, because geometrically, you can do things with a parabola that you can't do with a curved line. It gives you extra dimension, which I talked about higher dimensional consciousness and how game-changing that is. 1 inch of higher dimensional consciousness is worth 1,000 miles of flat dimension consciousness. If you can raise your game by even an inch, that dimension of movement, that degree of freedom, the rarity of that information that does not change becomes accessible to you and not many others. And you can see where it is present and where it is not, because you know the difference of where it is present and where it is not, because you can go to both. And that awareness is gained once you see two apparently conflicting things as completely analogous as one uniform concept, like the snake eating its tail, or more accurately, geometrically, a Mobius strip.
Okay, I
That's
can
how I see
it that way.
And that's how I see it. That's the math explanation. That's how I found it. So that's how, just to explain where that came from, the chicken and the egg part, I can answer that. The chicken was the math. The chicken was, I saw this video of this graph and this guy was explaining this thing. And I was like, what happens if I take this idea and learn how it's supposed to be used? And I did that and applied it to free will. And what behavior do I get? And it made me take a guess. So I said, if it behaved this way, I should try this. And it worked. And then, okay, so that was weird. And so I said, okay, well, I know how information works. So if this is true, the opposite point over here is true. And that means all this stuff that I don't understand yet must exist somewhere in here. So then I would have a more accurate way to ask a new question and say, okay, so this point should be here. Well, how would I find it? And I would think of some experiment or way to test it reliably. And I would set that up, and then I would say, okay, so that was different. What was different? And I would calibrate it, and then it would work. Prediction would match reality. So the mathematical model came before the experiments. The shape of the mathematical model comes from observation. But that's just a different way of deconstructing a higher dimensional thought. So anyways, last one here, this little thing anyways, vision-driven, creative intelligence. This is the thing that everybody wants to say they are the best at. And this is also the thing that nobody really, only the best of us really become the best version of this. I would say everyone else just tries. There's only one Michael Jordan of creative intelligence. There's only one LeBron James of creative intelligence. the vision-driven people. Those people get hired by Pixar, they get hired by Marvel. They are the special effects wizards specifically. The people who can make these incredible CGI generated worlds that are so hyper realistic that you can't tell the difference between them and reality except when they want you to know. That is creative intelligence. That is vision driven. Being able to imagine that which does not yet exist. That is what destroys relevance as a mitigating factor for the process of information forming. Whenever I think something isn't relevant, my snap response is, but how could it be? Specifically, for me, how could I make that useful to me right now? What person would I need to be to see that?
But isn't there more information that's not relevant than is? By
I would
definition?
say you have reached, in my opinion, the amount of information a person can understand as relevant is their creativity.
Then isn't there more information that you can't understand as relevant than is?
That
Thus,
depends
in
on how you
order to,
understand information. If your information is goal driven, then you only need to understand one thing, and that is your goal.
but isn't information infinite?
Which is why the goal is so important. That's where free will is. Your goal is your free will. Your goal is your ego. Your goal is your direction, your navigation, your conscious thought.
Yes, and
So
when you're
yes.
thinking about that, there's more out there that,
Yeah, but you don't need, so that's what determines relevance, is your current goal.
right, and you said that you personally, when something is irrelevant, you think, how can I make it relevant?
Because that's how you cheat. And I'm a cheater. So
But the-
when I don't think
but-
something
but
is
there
relevant,
has to
that
be
means
some
I don't have a
judgment there.
tool. It doesn't mean I would like that tool. It doesn't mean I care about that tool. It doesn't mean I think it's interesting. It doesn't mean I think it's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. It's one I don't have. And it's there and it's in front of me. And do you know how hard it is to find information when you've been looking for it all the time? Anything that's new is good. So for me, I've already experienced this information, whether I wanted it or not. How can I make the best of it?
I think that's
That
your
is not to
version.
throw it away.
I think that's your version of you have to surprise me to teach me.
I think
That's my
so.
perspective. Your
And so
perspective
me,
is,
I always try to surprise myself when I'm not interested in a thing. So I am not a person who is interested in this thing, which means unless no one else in existence has ever been interested in this thing, I have a new person I can learn how to be. That's a Mega Man boss I haven't fought yet. That's a way of understanding beauty that I have not felt. That's a way of seeing usefulness that I had not thought of. So that's how I get around the question of relevance is the limit of creativity. And I don't like limits. I don't like to be limited. So when I find something is irrelevant, to me, that's a limit of my creativity and intelligence. And I take it personally. And I take it personally to the point where I've invented some really cool mental stuff out of some terrific garbage. Enough to pull myself out of a pile of shit and give myself a happy life. And none of it had to do with money or opportunity. I ate bologna and ketchup sandwiches growing up. I got knocked around, same as a lot of other kids. I had, a death in the family, same as a lot of other kids. And some good stuff too, same as a lot of other kids, and a mix. But I didn't have what I needed. Nobody knew what I needed. I didn't know. So I had to get creative. I had nothing. Nothing was relevant. Everything. Too much information. How do you decide? Well, first thing you do is you try to get a goal. Second thing is don't waste your journey there by ignoring things that aren't what you want. You're already going past them. Your mind has an infinite storage capacity. The work is already 50% done and it's useless. So every time you make that trade, you give up half of something that you could have spent twice as much on to get a whole thing. But you don't keep the half something because it just goes away. Unmerged, it's useless. You already have the half that you had. That's what could make this part useful. The part that you didn't have was the thing that you needed to make useful. Well, that was given to you. So then the choice is, okay, I have this thing, that's half the battle. It's already here. Unless your memory is not capable of reverse engineering a memory of a concept that you've encountered before, this is accessible all the time. You never lose access to this sort of thing unless something goes terribly wrong with your mind, like a degenerative hardware problem. The machine stops working right because you get old and things die and they break. But for the most part, once you learn the thing, you have it. And especially if it's a decision, people always remember their decisions, unless they're not proud of them. But anyways, and that means not proud of could also mean not excited. Pride is a very specific thing I'm talking about. So let's talk about some categories of creativity. And I'm just going to go down a list here that I've got because I'm reading some kind of weird pie chart. So working solo, that's a type of creativity. Clarifying issues. Well, working solo, that's the kind of creativity of how do I do this thing without cooperation? That's the kind of creativity of working solo. How do I get around problems that can be solved with more than one person? How do I get around having limited resources? That's working solo. That's creativity, working solo. Clarifying issues. This is a good one. How good are you at troubleshooting? How many different ways do you know how to solve a problem that you've had? If the way is 0, well, then you're not very creative when it comes to clarifying issues. If it's 5, you might have a shot. The most creative people don't run out of solutions before their issue goes away. That's how you know you've got enough. That's the point of relevance. Do I ever have a problem that I can't fix? No. Okay, you can stop practicing fixing problems then. You can work on something else. That's the test. Being challenged, that's a good one. There's a very specific type of creativity to being challenged. Do you rise to the challenge? Do you find ways to make yourself more efficient? Do you find ways to give yourself more power than you already had? Do you find new things, new tools? Do you get stronger? What's the response? How creative are you to being challenged? Do you always do the same thing? If you are, is the same thing that you always do wise? Questions for everyone to answer. Analyzing data, that's a very good one, because remember, to the creative person, it's not what is relevant, it's how could it be relevant. So analyzing data, you have points that don't move. That is a creative person's dream, because creativity is a very chaotic process and it needs elements of stability for it to not break down. So the very creative person is not one who understands chaos. The very creative person is one who understands how to make a network of stability in an apparently chaotic sea. That's creativity. The creativity is the evidence that other people do not see what is plainly obvious to them. Stability in chaos. That's creativity too. Putting things together. There's an order of operations. Creativity of process. What if I do it this way? What if I do it a different way and save 2 steps? What if they both get the same result? One of them takes 30 seconds longer. The one who's 30 seconds faster is going to win over time. Creativity, making things work. That's a different thing. Like, how much pride do you have for making it work the way you wanted it to work? It's not enough that it works. No, it has to work the right way, for the right reason. That is the thing creative people don't suffer from. Making things work is the goal of the creative person. That's their drive. They're goal driven. Everything else is an obstacle. Let's see here, explaining things. That's a good creativity skill. Metaphors, language, definition, words, technically specific jargon to connect with certain professions. You don't have to be a fisherman to understand the language of fishing. You just have to watch fishing shows and pay attention. Maybe ask a question or two. The same thing goes for the circus. You don't have to be a circus performer to understand the physics of the trapeze act, to be able to talk what it means to perform without a net, where the net is actually just almost as great of a cause for injury if landed on incorrectly as the floor would have been. The net is not safe, it is safer to know that, even though one has never been on a trapeze. It's a creativity of explanation, because you can make a point to someone by using the points you know how they will make very well to themselves, which is the corollary of anything that you understand about yourself is something you understand about someone else. So if you understand enough about something else, and you know how deeply a person connects, you can know how deeply that person will connect to you or something else, because you've chosen the proper state of mind. You are very creative about your delivery, because your goal is deeper connection. Let's see here. Now that was the blue quadrant. Let's do the yellow quadrant here. So designing things, like, it's got to have a shape. How creative are you with that shape? What does it need to do? How does it need to look? Does it need to send a message? Is it functional? Is it aesthetic? Is it representative? A lot of ways to explore that. Taking risks, that's a really good one. Creative risk takers. Those people cheat time. And you cheat time by making accurate predictions. I'll repeat that. You cheat time by making accurate predictions, because then you don't need to wait for it to happen. To you, it's already done. And that, more than anything else, existence, is what can rise a person above their current state or lead them to a terrific fall. The inability cheat time enough to know how your actions today will play out tomorrow. That's a type of creativity and risk taking. And everything is a risk, because you're going to die. And you could die if a very small number of specific things happen. So it is not, am I at risk today, or am I not at risk today? It is, how much risk am I at right now? And which risks can I take that I believe I'm smart enough to predict the hazards of well enough to do this very specific thing that could harm me if I'm wrong? Am I wise with how far I can predict? Am I right? Do I have faith in myself? Because there's risk. Am I too scared to try, even though I know I'm right? There's a lot of depth to that. Playing around. If somebody is sensitive, they never learned how to be teased on. They never learned how to play on the playground. Not properly, anyways. You watch kids on the playground, they've got a pretty good idea how to play the game. Everybody bickers about the rules for a second. Everybody agrees quickly because they're playing the same game. The thing happens. There's a bunch of crazy excitement. The thing is over. Everybody talks about what just happened, and then they do it again. It's practicing cooperation and perspective. It's all games are, at least at the children level. It's developing cooperation with other kids and being able to say what happened as a team. Being able to understand that your perspective is not always your own. Getting some pretty harsh feedback sometimes when you're delusional. It doesn't feel nice when 8 kids tell you exactly that you're wrong in the same way. If you're a smart kid, you listen to those 8 kids because 8 of them are probably going to be right, especially if you're being a doo-doo head and you were out at the plate. You should have put your cleats up. So playing around, well, that in the grown-up world is very different. Because in the grown-up world, playing around has consequences. And I use the neutral form of the word consequence there. Meaning anything you do in your life has an effect. including playing around. You ever have a best friend when you're growing up? What did you guys do? You played all the time. That's doing it right. So maybe you play by, I don't know, hitting golf balls with somebody. Maybe you play by talking at the water cooler about that show. Maybe you play by, go ahead.
I was gonna go ahead and tell you, if you want to go ahead and meet every single day, we can play every day. I hear it. I see the vibes coming, dude. If you want to play every day, I'm down for it. Okay.
So Tony, I would love a year ago, you know what I would have done? A year ago.
You invited everybody to come to my group. That's what you did a year ago.
No. A year ago, if you'd asked that same question, I would have jumped in with both feet. But here's the difference. Here's the reason I don't now. If you bake a cake at 500 degrees and you need it to cook in half the time, what happens if you turn it up to 1,000 degrees?
It burns.
It burns. So one of the best metaphors for consciousness that helped me understand connecting with other people was there is a time for baking. Sometimes you have to let the dough rise. Sometimes you have to let the meat sit.
Okay, so I go back to the 6th grade talent show a lot.
Okay.
Another formative experience or experiences were my first 2 years of college. Oh, this camera's on. Okay. My first, you're big on the computer, so I'm using the computer to watch you, but I want to be able to give you feedback, so I have my phone up so you can see me too. I didn't have to explain that, did I?
I'm okay with it though.
But anyway, the second year of college was when I discovered that my energy, unreserved, is repulsive because it doesn't give that time to rise. And
it's too great of a change of state.
It produces the fully baked cake in people. Like I've always had my gift, and which is being trusted by others because I know how to listen to them, and listening to people makes them trust you. And so people would tell me their secrets and not know why. And that's when I would lose people, because in my presence, with my energy, getting you to, spill your guts or tell me things you've never told anyone else is great. But later on, when I'm not in your presence anymore and you're evaluating it, you freak out because you're like, oh my gosh, this person I just met now knows my secret. How did he get?
I have to tell you something incredible about that.
Wait. That was my second.
Don't let me forget.
It'll be fast. That was my second year of college. And that was a very small shift in how I deal with people. But I could tell it was very relatable. So now you can include your part.
Okay, so we've never talked about this before. The people and trust and secrets, etc. This is the first time you've said this information to me.
Okay.
That's why this is incredible. So people have always shared their secrets with me and they don't understand why, and they become closer to me because of it. Do you know why?
I can give you 3 to 10 reasons why.
Well, hang on. If it's a thing, so did you ever figure out how to bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't hard. It happened to figuring it out, bridging the gap.
So what was your bridge before I want to see how close they are?
Well, it's just a different way to listen or a different way to read energy, or it was so for me, they trusted me because I listened to them. And what happened was I wasn't giving them enough of myself. For me, I was just, by listening to them, I only reflected them and it gave them affirmation and gave them good energy. Yeah. And so that's why they spilled their secrets. Now, I don't let people spill their secrets anymore, or I make sure to recognize that energy to handle it the right way. Because a lot of times, even after people do that, I'm like, I tell them what they did because I don't want to keep that. I don't want them to think something different than what I know to be the case. So when they give me that energy, I then am able to respond with a different energy than I would have before.
You know what's interesting is, since you were able to analyze that so thoroughly, that there's a step that's missing. People ask to tell me their secrets before they tell me. And they always do, and they feel better for having done so. So something about the way that we handle empathy in other people produces a response that is natural to me, and one that you have to make sure you don't get wrong.
People ask you if they can tell you their secrets before they
And
do.
they share
And that's how
everything.
you look at it.
I mean, I can tell, and sometimes I know a person has a secret and they want to share, and I will make the conversation a good environment for that using the social algorithms I've shared. So pretty much I plant a ground that is fertile, but they're the one that decides if it takes root or not.
I feel like that's the perspective I have when people want my secrets. It's like I'm an open book, but you have to ask the right question, or you know.
You have a hard time knowing what other people want.
I do.
Well, if other people have to ask the right questions, then either you're a bastard who's holding a gatekeeper password, or you don't know.
I think I'm the first. That's what Jordan Peterson is described as often, or is seen as. Like that's not a bad thing. I'll take number one. Door number one, please.
Interesting.
I think it's a false dichotomy too, but it's also not an either or. Like just because it appears that way doesn't mean it is. So I can let my mind process that as a Mobius strip and get
You're right.
to
You'd
it
only
again,
be
but
the bastard to the person who can benefit from your help. You wouldn't
well,
necessarily be the bastard for not giving it.
well, I think everybody could benefit from my help in some way.
But,
Like
but
even
not enough to give it when it's not asked for properly. There's a password dance for you.
I don't think that's bad. I think that's how everyone should be. And I don't see it as a password dance.
Which
I
is
see it
why
as the
people
proper
don't
dance.
ask you first to tell you secrets, and they ask me all the time.
Are you sure? I feel like they do.
Well, if I have done it and you haven't, meaning if I
Well, I said I feel like they
describe this
do.
thing which
So,
you described differently, because you said this is a thing you watch out for, whereas for me this is a natural thing. I have to work hard to get people caught up in the state of the spirit of the moment. That's my weakness. My strength, though, is producing fertile ground for tiny things to grow. So that's why I say that is I just see it from a different angle, but that angle is one that points in a direction that gives me sense of size and scale.
I think a bridge between us that needs to be built is when you first said they ask you to tell you their secrets. I took that metaphorically and energetically and not literally.
It's literally.
So they literally say, can I tell you this? Or they literally express that, and that's what you hear from it. Because that's the perspective I have as well.
So it's not an either or.
It's
but
not
it's not an either or, but I always wait for it to get to either or from their perspective. So their shadow will speak. And it's usually they're speaking about a false dichotomy. The shadow is the harbinger of false dichotomy most of the time. True enough that it's a very good diagnostic tool and a very good guideline, because even if you're wrong, you're off by degrees, you're never off by direction. Having said that, people will know something is bothering them, but haven't decided that it's bothering them enough to bring it up. So from their subjective perspective, they are not bothered by it because they're not doing something about it. They don't feel they need to. However, if one learns to listen to the language of the shadow, you can hear the more subtle things that are being said. And if you feed the shadow, which is give the shadow the food that it needs to be stronger, then it will grow and it will be present. And if it is present in a comforting environment, which is what I create, a comforting environment for the shadow to be heard, that's when people get a look at their shadow.
I've got 15 more minutes. Leave me alone.
And they can deconstruct it. So that's kind of how that view of it works. So it is a place where a person can meet their shadow without being scared, because I become the friendly version of their shadow. I give it a voice. So it's like talking to the parts of themselves they don't want to see. And that's different for everybody, because certain people really hate certain parts about themselves. And you have to know the difference between somebody who is attacking you because they're angry and violent, and somebody who's attacking you because they're scared. and both of those use the same answer, is you let them hit you until it makes them look bad. And then you tell them it was wrong and see what they
Yeah,
do.
yeah. Let's bring it back, because I feel like there's definitely a bridge here to be built that I don't just want to okay and understand what you're saying. I feel like there's a little bit more here to dig.
All right.
Let's take it back to dang it, you said something that was another square root of 25 thing for me.
So
The
square root of 25 in the Mobius strip.
you said, oh, okay, so my last response or setup for you was the come on, don't lose it, Tony.
Is it about the shadow?
It wasn't about the shadow. It was about secrets, friends, telling you metaphorical or literal energy manipulation, getting up to that point and recognizing and controlling or understanding or predicting it, or everything up to that point of the secret telling. In my perspective from there, when you asked about for me to give something, I said, there were 3 to 10 ways that I could come up with, and the one that I gave you was an after effect of it, because that is more of where I'm from, and you're more of the effects leading
Well,
up
the heart of the 3 to 10 ways for me was sincerity.
Oh, but it's always been there. That's always been
Right.
there.
So that's what I'm saying, is
Aware
that the sincerity was inside you. All of the 3 to 10 ways, or the Dumbos, the feathers that Dumbo uses to fly. It's the sincerity that is the root. And a good goal for what to be sincere about. That is the power of empathy right there. If I had to put it down into a few words. Strategic sincerity.
Weaponized empathy is one of those terms that I use a lot too.
So
First of all,
put that in your arsenal, because it's different. Weaponized empathy and strategic sincerity. I like it.
How is it different?
Strategic strategy. That allows you to build plans. The weapons can do things, but strategies work over time. So it gives you the dimension of time. Whereas the weapon only gives you the dimension of utility.
Whoa, you think
so you have subjective utility in the moment with a weapon. How you string those together is strategy over time. You can't swing a weapon in the future. You can only swing a weapon right now.
What?
But you can plan to swing a weapon in the future and be at the right moment at the right time to make sure it happens. That's strategy.
I completely do not need to separate those at all. For me,
of course you don't. I wouldn't want you to, because it gives me power over you if you don't.
Yeah, I like it whenever you think stuff like that.
It's the -525, Tony. That's exactly what that is.
I disagree, in the moment, but I'm okay with it.
Over time. Or to say a different way, it's why we have the phrase "in the right place at the right time." Because what is a weapon except a thing that goes to a place to do damage? That's that. Who cares? But that's my dime store defense of my own perspective. Let's cover a few more of these really quick. Let's see. Attention to detail. That's a really good one for creative people. Creative people pay attention to shit nobody cares about. Sometimes the things creative people care about makes other people angry because it's so out there. But creativity does not mean wisdom or intelligence. Just because you can see a thing, you can't. Creativity needs to be born. It's how can it be useful? So what detail is useful that everyone else has missed? That's the difference between a 5-figure income and a 6-figure income right there. What details do you pay attention to that other people don't bother to understand? Another one, here we go. Coaching. I made sure to say this one, coaching. Tony, I'm gonna yield the floor and you tell me what it means to be a creative coach, since you actually have been a coach for 10 years. You have a better answer than I do about this.
Being a creative coach, AJ, you can go. Being a creative coach to me means two things. It means using the equipment and facilities creatively, and it means using the athletes creatively. Since I'm working from my perspective, I don't have to think about using me creatively because I'm the source and I already see those two things through me and all I'm able to do already. So I used to be able to take the mats and arrange them differently for every class to help keep the kids a little bit more in line and stuff like that. Also, I like, I always prefer the athletes with heart. The docile, quiet, shy athletes were the worst. Give me the girls that fight that are gonna throw a punch at me, and I will make them champions. You give me a girl that is quiet and half-asses everything and has no passion, and she'll probably be okay.
I need to submit the following because you gave me an inspiration. If we were a tag team social dynamic duo, I need to handle the people who are sad and you need to handle the people who are mad. In terms of competence to navigate with good vibes the whole way. Agree or disagree?
I disagree. I see. Okay, so something you do a lot, and I don't know if I
I
pointed this out
reflect.
yet. No,
I
no, no.
reflect a lot.
You compare needlessly.
No,
And
that's
you
reflecting to me.
rank-
I'm saying the image I see and its reflection at the same time, so that you can tell me which
But-
one's wrong. Because whenever you tell me it's wrong, you
Okay.
tell me how to make it right.
Okay. What was wrong about that was not that you were expressing your opinion. It was, I heard your opinion stated as fact or like agree with. I can definitely see how you could see it that way. Fine. However, I do not compare us in the sense that you might be better at handling mad people than me or sad people than me.
No, the opposite.
I think
yeah.
we're both great at both. That was a complete sentence. Did you catch it?
But
I think
no,
we're
it
both
wasn't
great
about
at both.
this. This
So it
wasn't
wasn't
either or. It
about
was a
being a tag
calibration
team.
question.
It was a tag.
preference question.
You referenced as a tag team duo. Would
I did.
this be better? Or is this preferred? Or is this a good idea? Or is this positive? And what I'm saying is I won't draw those judgments because I don't see either one of us being better than the other person.
So what did I just learn?
That's up to you. What could you have learned? Do you want me to brainstorm 20 to 50 things?
No, I just mean, I've learned, instead of the question I've asked, the answer you've given me.
Which is my perspective, that you're
Which
not
is the only
wrong
thing
and
I
can see
care
how
about
yours
in the
fit.
first place. So my question to me is almost as irrelevant as your answers are to you sometimes. Because I'm only measuring the subjective to create objective points using techniques I have, which is the thing that your cloaking spell tries to obfuscate. But I'm just recognizing how to see through it now, and both of us are benefiting from learning that, because once that veil drops, you see what's behind it, and I see
think
what's behind
something
mine.
that's different for you is you see this as a password, where I see this as actually just giving what can be given. Like, remember, I keep asking, and there's still a disconnect on how
There's a
could I have
long
gotten
history
here
of rich
sooner?
people keeping things from the poor.
So I feel like every time you've asked, I haven't answered a question, or you feel like I haven't answered a question, I gave you exactly the response that you gave to me in saying that if I'd answered the questions, you would have gotten there sooner. And I'm like, but I told
rephrase. I want to
what you
repeat
said.
that because I feel that's an appropriate metaphor. There's a long history of the rich not giving to the poor. If somebody asks me for a thing I have, I go out of my way to give it to them, even though I don't have much in the realm of ideas. You're miserly.
I don't see that as okay.
Of course you
I'll
wouldn't
let
see
you.
that as bad. It's you.
I'll let
You're the
you.
hero. Make it
I
heroic.
wasn't gonna say bad.
Make it
I wasn't
heroic though. I
See
want
that
to
as
build it
bad.
up. Make it a virtue.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Make what a
This is
virtue?
shadowboxing for me.
Poverty. Make what a virtue?
Now, you were going somewhere, and it sounded like a very positive thing that you were going to say about yourself, and I was encouraged.
I wasn't gonna say it was bad like you did. So I'm not sure if we knew if we were going the same place.
Well, we'll go back to the point of disagreement. That's always a good place to start.
Okay, where is it?
We were talking about Crap, I had it. My brain will get there. I just need a second.
All right, so we were on
Coaching.
people coaching.
Coaching.
You said, oh no, it was on people. You said if we were tag team
Yeah.
online
Okay.
social media, I should handle the mad people and you should handle the sad people.
Right, and I said that right after you had said, don't give me the shy kid, unathletic kid, give me the angry girls and I'll make champions of them. So for me, I would say, wow, I could make a champion. Of the shy
Docile.
kid.
Docile.
Oh, so then we're talking about rich and poor. Yeah, that's what we were talking about, rich and poor.
You said the rich have a long history of
Not giving to the poor. And what I was saying is if the answer that a person is looking for is known, and the price of sharing that information is sharing that information, and the decision is made that the one who does not have it should not get it, then that is a divergence in our behavior patterns, because from my perspective, I don't have much, but I always give what I have as much as I can.
It's not a divergent because that is completely 100% true for me. Our divergence starts in your first 20 words.
Please.
Our divergence starts in your first 20 words because you assume you have what someone wants.
So now what
and
you're doing is
to
the
them,
mental mapping process.
as opposed
Now you're telling me
to-
how it's wrong.
I'm telling you where we might diverge.
No, I'm agreeing. I'm encouraging. That was legitimate encouragement. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was excited.
I was just making sure that I'm not
I
being.
did that thing where I was
it's a yes
narrating what I was noticing.
It's a yes
and I didn't
and.
separate it from my words. I was like,
It's a
he's
yes
doing the
and.
thing. He's doing the thing. Look, he's doing it. That was me just now. I was like, he's finally sharing it the way that I understand it. Please, I'm sorry, my excitement took over.
Yeah. So our divergence starts in the first 20 words because you said if you have the information, if you have something that someone wants, you'll give it to them as much as possible. I'm the same way. However, I think that I can't know what someone wants. And you have to ask the right questions to get the right answers, because I'm going to give you what you want up to what you can understand, up to what I can give you, up to what is
Like,
energy
you always
efficient,
have
up
everything
to I
you
have the
have.
time.
That's the
I
question.
have that I can, that's relevant, that the energy matches. There's so many, there's 100 reasons why. There's no one reason why anybody does anything. There is no one reason why anybody does anything. There may only be one reason they are aware of, but they also had to likely have the money. They also had to likely have the time. It also likely had to be the right year. It also likely had to, involve the right other people at some point.
Oh, so yeah, but how come those aren't
Has to
linked
be
together
nice.
over time for you?
They are.
But then they're one thing,
Why?
because you've linked it together. A chain is a
Okay,
chain.
what?
It's not a chain is every link in the chain. A chain is also one chain. So if you link them together, you have one thing with distinct and recognizable parts.
Give me the box. 5 minutes.
So that's how that, like, yes, the chain links exist. Yes, the chain links are linked. Yes, they can be traced and followed.
You said how come they're not linked over time?
I'm saying, how come you don't see them as linked over time? What a better question would be is, how come you don't treat them like they're linked over time as one thing? That would have been a better question.
Go play. Why aren't they? Or why don't I see them as linked over time? Wait. The kids got to me. We need to take one step back.
I think I might have a better metaphor. That might make it easier. So say that you understand where a person is mentally, or at least
for my benefit, I think I understand.
Exactly.
I don't like the absolute. Okay.
Say you've got a
I think
general
I
idea
understand
where somebody is. Okay, and it's close enough that you think you have something relevant to offer. So they have an idea about something you're intimately familiar with. Now, say that they also have a clear goal, which you can ask them for. And if it's clear, they'll be able to tell you in words that you'll understand. Which means the only thing that you need to complete that picture from a triangulation perspective, a mathematical necessity perspective, is which direction they're going. Towards the thing that will get them closer to what they want, or away from it. So your duty at that moment is not to tell them how to get there specifically, because maybe you don't have that whole map. But what you can do is pick an object that is near to where they are trying to go and say, try looking for that because it's close. And then when they find it, you let the cake bake. And then you follow up and they describe things to you that are closer and more specific to the thing that's about you told them. They did their homework. And then you have the specific information you need to find out what they need. So you might be getting caught in the magic bullet trap where if there's not one step to do it, it doesn't get done. But if you link small things together over time, it's like 4 steps and the process is done. As far as that goes, as far as giving people the help they want, is it's goal, direction, landmark, advice. Done. Goal, direction, landmark, advice. Done.
Where's the subjective nature of if they think they got what they wanted?
They'll tell you. You got to trust them.
No, but isn't that a part of it? Like for me, I can't say
you
done.
ask them.
For me, that's where I judge everything by that done. For me,
Yeah.
I judge it based on the done. So
Well, their goal was to get you to give them the information. So as soon as you give them the information, it's successful.
So what you're telling me is that when you asked those questions before, and I gave you the information about my shadow, that I was done and I let it bake, and then now you come to the realization that I operate on those harmonic vibes, that I do live in other people's consciousnesses,
Correct,
literally, that
correct.
I feel.
And why and how and the mathematical nature of which thing that it was close to in nature. That was the thing that was revelatory.
So the thing for me that's missing is how could have answering your question. Oh,
because I was looking for landmarks.
Wait.
I was saying this is a landmark you should know.
I'm
giving you the answer directly from the horse's mouth. I was asking for a landmark that I knew was close that I thought you would understand as well. So I didn't need you to give me what I was looking for as I understood it or would. I needed you to get me to the landmark that I had predicted was close to the thing I wanted.
That sounds a whole lot like you want the high fives and the simplicity instead of the complicated.
Yes. I need the kindergarten explanation.
But that's like what you said. I was already in your explanation. You mentioned I was like that, and so does this mean I was speaking your language and you wanted me to speak mine, and so that's why it misfired?
What I'm saying is there's overlap that's not fully mapped out enough that I can recognize directions that are passing each other, some of them intentional and some of them not.
I think that's about intention. I think that's the bridge that I mentioned before about intention.
Polarity.
We can't map it.
Yeah, polarity.
We can't map each other. Yeah, we can't map each other without knowing intention, because intention
tells us
the information that we look for in other people, because we read shadows.
So if you want to replace a superpositional perspective with one that's a little bit more in line with a false dichotomy, but translates superpositional information relatively well enough, polarity is a good indicator. Polarity is a good substitute. It's not perfect. Superposition is better. But
I'm gonna add a polarity video to my YouTube list.
So, well, that's our time for today. I think we talked about creativity and we talked about a lot of stuff because that's what these lectures are. We try to make them interesting to the people who are having them, and this one was a good one, I felt. Hopefully you agree.
Of course, this is great. And I like the ending of this. There were lots of questions. I always feel a little bad when I don't have questions and it just has to be like, yeah, I get it.
What question do you wish I would have answered?
What question do I wish you would have answered? The answer to that is a question that likely wasn't asked. And it would be along the lines of, why do you think we are so different in the way that when I judge learning things by feeling like I know less, or being more aware of how much more out there is to know, being more uncertain.
So you just learn by when it makes you feel smaller.
Yeah, because I know knowledge is infinite.
That's a perfect proof, because I understand learning by feeling bigger.
Right, and the question is, where is our bridge? The question is, where is the middle point between us? Can we both feel neutral and still feel like we learned?
Well, we can cross over into the opposite polarities.
Yeah, because we're able to do that because of what we already do.
So
Like,
that's the
it's
thing
not
is
hard
being
for us
able to
to.
do something that solves one problem does not produce the mechanism which solves that problem plus something else. Meaning just because you can teleport doesn't mean you can't travel in a straight line and get there in the way you're supposed to go. So what I'm saying is that there is this objective value to certain lines, to taking the long way, to taking the twisted, slow way, the way that makes you feel smaller. For me, my perspective of when this is successful is when I can feel as big as you do. That's my success because I know how to feel as small as I can. Would I be happy if by the end of that you could feel as small as I can? I would be happier if that was true because that would mean that you learned something from me. Because what happens is people don't understand the life cycle process of cognitive procreation. Okay, the ideas are living things. They're like babies. If you
Ecuador,
don't
they call it in
touch
the
them,
spiritual community.
if you don't touch them, they die. If you don't develop them, they stay toddlers. But here's what happens when the two things fully integrate. There's a growth process and everything settles. Now what you have is a fully integrated, mutually mapped perspective. You have two maps that are the same shape and size. It's work. But when you have two maps that are the same shape and size, it's two highly creative people, now all you have to do is say, spin the map this way, cut the map on this line, and it's one creative observation that has the power to change entire dimensions of perspective. It's exponential, but you gotta do the work.
Well, I feel like we're both invested.
I do too, and we're getting further. This conversation felt like one of the more clear ones that we've ever had.
Definitely. I got a lot of the information to get. Oh, it started from when you gave me the longer explanation and I said our disagreement was in the first 20 words. Before I said our disagreement or our bridge, no, it's not a disagreement, it's a bridge. Our bridge, our yes and was in the first 20 words. And before I said that, I said that is 100% undeniably true, and everything else. Like, that's like 100 for real. Like, that process and then going down that path, I think, is the result of a lot of work that we've done already. So yeah, I'm with you. And I got kids yelling.
All right, Tony, thanks for I'm happy. I'm gonna leave this note that my Tony translation machine was able to produce a good question for you at the end of the thing. Whereas before my good question attempts have failed. So another successful use of the Tony translation machine. It's alive and well, centered on Tony's avoidance of being measured. The core process of it is the one assumption that makes it work is that Tony will always reliably avoid being measured in any way. Which I apologize for hitting you right in the dick shadow before I leave, but that's how it works. Tony, I love you. Go bake on it.